All I'm gonna do is just do it, get it done, till it's done.
Hey, what's
Till
going
I'm
on, everyone? My
done.
name is Major. I'm the host of the Majorvation podcast, where we talk about all things inspirational, aspirational, and motivational. Today, I did not disappoint you. I have an amazing guest on. We have a lot of similarities in common. We just found out we live close to each other, so we will be doing coffee, and I'm gonna call him out on the show to make sure he follows up and do coffee. He's got to make a commitment on the show with us today, but this gentleman is very seasoned in his experience in life from my point of view and my perspective. I'm talking about Jamil Frazier. Jamil is someone who has set a certain standard for himself. He has a great story in regards to where he was, and he made the tough decision to figure out where he can go. And those type of stories are the stories that we need to hear more of in our community, because sometimes we get in a place where we're stuck and we're trying to figure out things. So it's good to relate to other individuals who have these powerful stories that have morals and values connected to them. He's a family guy. He's athletic, and he's just aligned with everything that we are about here in the Majorvation community. So without further ado, Jamil, welcome to the Majorvation podcast.
We are in the building, man. I'm so excited to be here, man. We were just chopping it up and I'm such a fan of yours. I think when we think about people that my oldest son is 13 and right now he's been influenced by lots of different areas, right? Whether it's actors or hip hop artists or whatever. And I always tell him the type of people I would like for him to look up to, and you are that man. And so when I think about, who Major is, you know, it is the person that will have the values and the morals and the determination, I think the motivation for young boys like my son, like my boy Ezra, 13, to look up to, man. So I just appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you do, everything that you're about, and I'm excited to be on today.
No, I appreciate that, man. That's great words. I'm gonna have to definitely share this clip with my 14-year-old son to let him know how someone else thinks about me, so he can kind
Right?
of take towards that as well.
Yeah, because my 13-year-old, man, I don't know if your 14's like this, but he never give me any credit. Like, he doesn't even read my books. He read other people's books and tell me how good their books are. I'm like, bro, have you even read chapter one in any of my book? Nah, it is rough out here.
Right, we just dad, man. We got to get in where we fit in and plant those seeds and just kind of guide them as we go. But yes, I experienced the exact same thing every single day here in my household. I have three boys, and so on a daily basis, I hear old man a lot.
Yes.
Like, so I hear all the jokes, but I wanted to discuss and just kind of take it back and you just kind of walk us through your journey. I know that you expressed that, you was at a certain point in your life, probably around 29 or 30, where you had been working for a certain amount of time in pharmaceutical sales. Kind of walk us through that process, because I can relate to that, but kind of walk us through that thought process of every day sitting in that car having that anxiety before you go into that office, before you go through that door, walking through those hallways to your desk, before that meeting, before that conversation. Kind of walk us through that process. And then, is there a certain moment that a light bulb clicked beyond your wife encouraging you, which is so great to hear, that said, you know what, let me step away from this on faith and go after something else? Kind of walk us through that if you can.
Yeah, I think what's important is I didn't know that I was fed up and until I knew that I was fed up.
Mm,
And I think a lot of times, when I look back on my journey, is like we don't know what feeling bad looks like until you start to feel good. So for me, it was just what I did. I mean, I was a sales guy. I was in pharmaceutical and medical sales. I was making a living for my young family. And I just, to rewind a little bit, had just moved out of a 2-year depression. And so when we found out we were pregnant with my oldest boy, instead of being elated, I was agitated. And instead of being excited, you know, I I I I had fallen into a depression. I did something that, you know, I don't know, man, us men probably shouldn't be asking our wives to do, but I asked her to consider having an abortion. And obviously she said no. And because I grew up without a father, I was never taught how to be a man. And so that fear sort of set in. And the only thing that I could think of is I don't want to be here, but I also don't want to leave because then I'll just be perpetuating the same cycle that I had come from. So I was there, but I was depressed and I couldn't elevate until I learned how to separate. So a couple things happened to me. In that depression. I got really unhealthy, man, high blood pressure, obstructive sleep apnea, all of these sort of physical ailments. And I had a chance to get healthy about 2 years after that depressed state. And not only did I have a chance to get healthy, but somebody saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. And that's why the message that I preach these days is about hope, is about restoration, is about elevation, is a hope journey, because I didn't have that. But I had the opportunity to go to an event where I saw a lot of inspiring men like you, and at that event, I had a chance to see what people were doing that was much, much greater. And I wasn't willing to drop something lesser until I saw something that was greater. And so once I come back home to California and I'm sitting in the car and I'm going to walk into a doctor's office in a medical facility that I just don't want to do because I had been exposed to something that was so much better. And it was a moment, it was a feeling. I don't encourage people necessarily to do what I did the way that I did it, but I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so I took the risk and decided to quit that day and to go on the journey to build a company and an organization and to see if I could do it, which I believe that I could do because I just seen so many men and women that it stepped out on faith. And I figured if they could do it, I could do it.
No, that's so telling. You know, when I hear other stories similar to yours, I always, you know, take out the pom poms and just really get the applauding because it takes a lot of courage. First of all, to deal with depression, to deal with self doubt. I'm someone who grew up in a household, single parent household. I don't have a relationship with my father. I don't know who he is, and now being older and having a 14-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old asking, "Where's my dad? Where's your dad?" So they're asking these questions, and because I've suppressed it so much and just made sure that I don't replicate that type of behavior, it makes me think about it more. And there are some trauma there, and there are some unanswered questions there. And so when I see individuals that still fight through that and still show up, for these young kids that we're building that didn't ask to be here, I just applaud you because there are moments where it's hard and you have those other thoughts that come into your head, like you said, man. And so, like when I say I take the pom poms out for everyone that I see that pushes through, and that brings me to my next question. Oftentimes when I'm coaching and consulting individuals, we talk about mindset and how important it is beyond, in addition to having faith and hope, right? But the trick of the mind, the psychology of the mind is how you perceive things and make a decision on how you're going to react to it. And so the biggest test is this an obstacle or is it an opportunity?
Come on now.
What is your mindset when it comes to how you perceive things as an independent person, entrepreneur, business owner, coach, podcast creator? How do you still look at the obstacle like an opportunity, or do you speak to that life, to ones that you're speaking to as well?
Yeah, so one of the things that I was trained is if I'm going to seek growth, then I need to understand that the obstacles are the way to receiving that growth. And I didn't know that before. You talk about mindset, and one of my books primarily is on this subject. But man, I didn't have a growth mindset. I had a poverty mindset. But it wasn't necessarily my fault. I grew up for 20 years on welfare, on Section 8 housing, on food stamps, on government assistance. That's what I knew. And so when things were hard, it was hard. And not only was it was hard and it wasn't my fault. And so that personal agency and that personal responsibility wasn't something that was embedded into me. So when I started my journey to entrepreneurship, I didn't have that. So I had to find mentors that helped me develop that. And I would say probably my first 3 years of entrepreneurship wasn't even so much on focus on scaling the business and building a brand and all that stuff. It was really on scaling my belief system in
Right.
the way that I chose to see things. So one of the first chapter of my book, The 12 Shifts, is called You Have Superpowers. And that was one of the biggest realizations to me is that we're really gifted as human beings of creating stories. And the stories that we're going to create basically is probably built off of our past and our past experiences. What I did not know, Major, is that we could change those stories. So if it's something that looks like it's negative or in a thorn, or it's going to sort of challenge us to where we can't complete the thing, we could change that same story to something that's going to be empowering, uplifting. It's going to push us through the thing. But
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do that. So immediately, my mentors, people like you, coaches like you, consultants like you that I had to seek out, probably the biggest way that they helped me was asking questions like this: is this thought serving you? And it wasn't something that I ever asked myself because I didn't even know to become conscious. I didn't know that the way that I thought in my belief system was sort of a construct that was given to me. I just thought that's what it was. Like you have a you have a stimulus and you have a response. I didn't know that there was a gap to where I can now start creating the outcomes that I wanted to see. And so as they started asking me sorts of questions, are these thoughts serving you? I had to start asking myself, well, how do I even know if it's serving me? And the only way that I could do that is to start to become extremely clear on what I wanted the outcomes to be, how I wanted the future to be, how I wanted the business to be, my life to be, my marriage to be, what I wanted fatherhood to be. I've never seen fatherhood before, like you. I never thought about how I actually wanted it to be. What do I want my last name to be? So as I start to learn how to sort of create the life that I wanted, now I can start to develop that consciousness that you're talking about and start to create new stories instead of just allowing the stories that have been given to me to continue to manifest.
No, that's so true, and that's so telling. I have a few mentors, and I remember just going through one of the books from Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil, and
Yeah. Oh my God. One of the most powerful books.
and I've read it probably 500 times, and I listen to it in the car like hip hop music, right? Like all the
Yeah.
time. And it's so cool. Before I get to my point, it's so cool now that my kids are reciting, quotes from this particular audio book. Because I've listened to it and I've read it so many times, and I've given it to certain young people that I've mentored as well. But they talk about, intention and the outlining what a drifter is, and you talked about awareness, right? Sometimes you don't know until it's kind of identified and brought to your attention so you can see your habits, your character, and your reaction, or just see the example of how to be a man or how
Yeah.
to be the best athlete and what it takes. The fundamentals is what really got that person to that greatness. And that for us, it's like those habits. Like, how do you tweak those habits? How do you become aware of those habits? And how do you take those steps towards it versus getting depressed and feeling down because you see somewhat of a perfect image on social media, which isn't always what the case is, right? And so reprogramming ourselves, which is essential and so important. And so essentially what you're saying is that, you realize what I realize, that we are the authors and directors and producers of our story. And that story can change. Why? It's because we have the pen.
Yes.
We have the ability to rewrite, to scratch out, to change, and develop the path that we want to walk on, right? But I do want to say this to you though. I got a slight beef with you.
Okay.
Slight beef with you because probably a good 45 minutes ago, I was going through some of your content and I was looking at some of the podcast stuff. And there was one clip that was on there that's very, very close to my heart because it's why I do everything when it comes to my kids. And you teared up on me, and I found myself in here somewhat weeping, and my mother-in-law walked in, and I'm like, no, 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 the window is open. I got
Right.
something in my eye right here. Right? So, so Jamil, tell me how important it is for you at this point in stage with everything you do. How important is family to you?
It is a thing, the podcast that you are referencing, man, I did not expect to break into tears, but I think what happened in that moment was it just put me back to how it felt. Like, because I started this whole journey, like I say, man, I feel like I just stumbled into stuff. And then one thing led to another that led to another that led to another. Like, if you like people ask me, like, how do you become an accredited investor and an angel investor and get into private equity? I have no idea. I just stumbled into this stuff. Like, I was just trying to be happy. And so when he asked me that question about, why do you do this? It's because I wanted to be happy and I wanted to keep my wife and I didn't want her to take my son. That's why I started this whole thing. And so with you talking about personal agency and being the author of this story, I started understanding that this whole journey was about the family. And can we create something that when people look back on a Frazier last name, it actually means something different than it's meant before I was born. And so, like, even last night, Monday nights, I get out the whiteboard and I take the kids through training. And last night, the training was we have something called the Frazier philosophies, and we have 15 sort of rules that we live by. And so we went through. We've done this millions of times, but we went through the first 10, and then we stopped and we debated and we talked about it. And one of the philosophies was we believe in earning profits over just wages. So Jim Rohn quote that you and I probably both have. And so instead of just sort of leading them through that, I opened up all of the different accounts and all the investing accounts and showed them all the real estate and it's important for me to have them see and understand a different dynamic than one that I could even begin to believe to see. And so that's what this whole thing is about, man. I'm 43. I'm gonna be dead here within the next probably 5 to 6 decades. And so what am I gonna leave behind? Am I gonna leave something that is going to allow for my ceiling to be my kid's bottom floor? Or am I gonna leave the same legacy that's been passed down that sort of landed on me that brought me up with such a fixed mindset and not understanding that I actually am the dominant force of my own life. So that's what this whole thing is about, and I'm passionate about it. And I fully expect for the next generation to be far superior than my wife and I. Like they've been equipped, they have the tools to take this thing and take the baton a step further. And we talk about that a lot. So that's what this whole thing is about. Like I don't even necessarily want you and I were kind of laughing about this about audiobooks. Man, my book team just hit me up yesterday and was like, "Oh, we found a spot for you in Scottsdale." And I was like, "Dang, I don't really want to go." Cuz I hate doing audiobooks. But when I think about stuff that I do, I don't want to do it. The major factor why I do it is to show them that it can be done.
Yeah, yeah, big time. I think that, I mean, that's why we all do it. You know, it's interesting. Last week, my son was getting ready to leave his school, and one of his buddies, and I'm just a fly on the wall. I'm talking to some other parents, but I kind of heard their little side conversation because he was being invited to a skating event.
Mhm.
But my son looked at his phone and he saw on his calendar that he had a tax code class. So this week, he's learning about the tax code.
Right.
And that blew the kid's mind because he's like, what are you talking about? Like, what is that? But for me as a parent, knowing that I didn't have that type of knowledge and there was tools and resources or was directed in those directions as far as intellect and knowledge and wisdom, to understand that that's a necessary, you know, um, piece for you. It just felt really good to see him respond in that way. And fast forward yesterday, two of his other friends asked could they join, right? So now he's leading the way on some stuff that's so foreign to them, but it's like it's okay. That's why we're having these little classes, and I'm having people to come talk to you about the tax code so you can understand how it works, how to maneuver, if there are any kind of loopholes, the importance of business and assets and liabilities. I didn't hear about any of this stuff until I
No.
was 30, 35,
Yeah.
and I consider myself a late bloomer in so many different areas. Unlike this, like yourself, I'm 47, so I started late, and I was drifting. I was just floating around, and I had all these random successes that kind
Mhm.
of distracted me from really getting that knowledge. And it can do that. I heard something else you said, Jamil. You said that in order to what a lot of people should focus on when they're building something first when it comes to a business is the business of self. And for me, that truly resonated because if you're not self-developing yourself and figuring out what makes you happy, um, how that motor continues to run, and developing empathy towards being a great leader, then it's really not about the business. The business is ultimately statistically going to fail because you don't have those things in place. Talk to me a little bit about that mindset and what kind of brought you to that particular understanding.
Yeah, I think it started early on. I had this mentor, man, great, great woman. Her name's Kim Fish. She wrote a book called Monster Under the Bed. Maybe one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. But at the time she was helping me, I didn't appreciate her as much as I probably should. Like, I don't know if you've ever had
Oh yeah,
somebody like that in your life. And then after a while, you're like, dang, man, I wish I wish I would have paid attention a little bit more. Um, but I remember telling her, man, you make all this money. Man, I want influence like you. I want impact like you, man. I want the money like you. I want the car like you. She had houses in all these different places, man. I'm stuck in a 700 square foot apartment, right? That you talk about issues, that apartment had it. And so I wanted what she had. And I remember her pulling me aside and she said, Jamil, you don't want that. And I was like, yes, I do. And I want the millions. I want it. And she goes, if you had it, you wouldn't know what to do with it. And it's going to fall right back down to where your development is right now. You would literally ruin my business. You would ruin my bank accounts. You would ruin my investments. You would ruin my houses because the business, the investments, the wealth, the vision is only going to be as big as you are. And I remember when she told me that, man, like it didn't make sense to me. I'm like, oh, I just couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear it until probably like 2 years later. And I've been grinding and grinding and grinding and growing and, reading books and studying and just trying to figure it out. Sometimes entrepreneurship can feel like you're just in an island trying to find land. And I remember I gone through this really crazy journey to where I was like, okay, I done as much as I can to really scale this organization. I have to start bringing people in. I have to start, you know, I have to start utilizing leverage. I have to learn how to become a leader. I had no idea how to do that. And as I had gone through this really troublesome season of trying to figure that out, I remembered her words that this thing is never going to get bigger than the person that I become. And um and that's when I really just went on the journey to build myself. I think probably in the 3 month time period after that, like I had read or audiobook probably like 70 something books within 3 months. I just devoured information because it was really apparent to me that I can't I can't take more withdrawals out of life in my business than deposits that I made in. And I always thought that, oh, maybe if I could just get what they get, right? If I could have what Major has, right? Like then I'd be good. Nah, bruh, you are going to ruin it. And we see it acted out all the time. We see it when folks are gifted stuff that they haven't developed into the people that can actually handle it. We see it with lottery winners. We see it with athletes all the time. We see this over. We see it with me growing up on welfare, right? Like if my family, if you would have just dropped $100,000 into our pockets, come on, man. You already know where that man, that 100,000 gonna be gone within a week.
Right.
So it wasn't enough for her just to tell me that. I had to go through the journey to experience it. And now I know it. So developing yourself, man, is one of the most crucial things that you can do if you want to get in the game of entrepreneurship, building businesses, definitely building wealth. You got to spend more time working on yourself than you probably even work on the business.
No, that is so true. I was listening to another podcast and they were just talking about somewhat like you just referenced, the statistics of the lottery winners, within a couple years, they're literally broke, if it's 80 million, they give them 5 years, right? If that 5 years and they're broken, that blows a lot of people's mind because just how you were back then, it was like, there's no way possible. I'm set for life. This is $80 million, but they don't understand that's 45. If you're in California, right? That's 45%, 50% gone from taxes, right? And then because they have a poor mindset, they instantly are going to go get a mortgage for $60,000, $70,000 a month. They're going to get 13 cars. They're going to eat out every single day. And so that entire dynamic is going to change. Now, the spending is going up, but now they don't have the brain to make the money grow for itself. So when you talk about that 100,000, I've been there. I've
Yeah.
been a part of those. Just give me 10,000, cuz, I'm going to turn it.
Yeah,
I'm going to turn it.
just let me hold some, man. Just let me hold some.
I'm like, listen, I get it. I understand, but the best I can do for you right now is make sure your phone bill and your Wi-Fi is working and give you this game because I'd rather show you how to fish versus just giving you the fish and you have to come back to me every single time to do that. And I would be doing you a disservice. And that's one of the great ways that I've cultivated relationships with some of the powerful people that I know and some of the mentors that are multimillionaires and billionaires from my opportunity politically over the last 6, 7 years, having that experience of being in those rooms and to get that knowledge, even though I was going into rooms where people were fans and supporters of mine, they will tell you I was 100% a student in there to learn. And
Mhm.
because I was so receptive to learn, Jamil, that's what gave me such a voice and so many more extensions of my stories to talk about solving some of our complex issues and problems and plights that we had here in our state in California. So making those connections are extremely crucial. I wanted to ask you with the podcast, was that just something that, because now being a podcaster is like a rapper, everyone is doing it, right?
Yeah.
But you got to do it. I'm doing it, but I love the creativity of it. I love the process of it. It allows me to connect with individuals like yourself, and who knows what we're going off to do as well. But I just think it's a learning opportunity, and it's another tool and a platform. How has your experience been thus far with it, and what prompted you to start your podcast? We got like 5 more minutes.
Yeah, it's all good. So we're still new in the game. Like I wouldn't consider myself a podcaster yet, but I think for me it was curiosity. I've been interviewing folks for the last decade, and I wanted to do a podcast basically selfishly for myself. I mean, honestly, because I still I still have a lot of um with the imposter syndrome. It's still hard for me to believe that we've accomplished some of the things that we've accomplished. And I never saw myself as a businessman. And I always say I still don't. Like I really admire folks who I see as business people. And once we started getting into angel investing, and once I started moving in different circles, and I started meeting people that have built companies and have sold companies for 30, 40, 50, 100 million, man, I have so many questions. And so when I started the Difference podcast, it was really about that. It was one, I think that there's a belief that's out there that guys who look like me can't do that. And so I wanted to start giving information that yes, we can. And there's like the biggest thing that's holding us back are ourselves. And um, so that was something that I wanted to talk about. But I also wanted folks that had gone on a journey of building businesses, scaling businesses, and selling businesses to share their stories because um, these folks aren't like, I don't want to say they're not brilliant. They're definitely brilliant. They're smart, but they're just normal people. Like at the end of the day, they are just normal people that want to be liked, that want to be loved, that probably feel like they're not enough, that have the same struggles and challenges as most other people as well, um, but have done a handful of things differently. And so I wanted to ask them, what has that difference been and what's made you different? So the Difference podcast is really about that. It's like finding these people that I think we look at that are extraordinary to realize that they're pretty ordinary, but they've done probably four or five things extraordinarily.
And that comes from from discipline, right? We can do the exact same thing, but how long can you do it? And that's mainly the difference, creating those habits and building that character. Because a lot of successful people that I've been around, they somewhat respect the ones that are successful, that's been successful 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Where you come in there with 5 years of success, they're like, man, come back in 5 more years, 10 more years, 20 more years, right? And so that's one of the separating proponents, right? And then like with sports, the fundamentals. Everyone wants to come in and start shooting long like Steph, but they don't understand that Steph shot close millions
Yes.
of times before he started to step back to the free throw line. Then from the free throw line back to so it's always those steps when no one is watching. And so that's why I just appreciate people when I see them on a rise. I consider myself on a rise as well because we all have different levels of circles that we enter into that we humbly go in as students and I get excited to be in those rooms because it allows me to extract and then go and give and be of service to others because it really does come down to the mindset and the information available. One of the things my mama used to say, God rest her soul, when I was young, she said, if you ever want to hide something from a black person or a black man, just put in the book. She said,
Yeah.
don't let that be the case for you, right? And so I'm always encouraging. I'm like you. I'm an avid reader. I have a similar story. I did 2 years of just reading, and came out of that process, wasn't making no money, living in a 400 square foot back house of somebody's in Pasadena while my wife was working, and it was crazy, but that information changed my life and opened up a whole new portal and perspective in my life, man. So, Jamil, thank you so much for joining me on the Majorvation podcast. This will not be the last show and sit down that we do.
Yeah.
Definitely want to do one in person as well. But thank you so much for sharing your story. And we'll definitely link back up and do this again, brother. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir.
All I'm gonna do is just do it, get it done. Till it's done, then I'm done. All I'm gonna do is just do it, get it done. Till it's done, then I'm done. All I'm gonna do is just do it, get it done. Till it's done, then I'm done. All I'm gonna do